The shuttle was falling apart. Daniel could feel it in his bones as the ship shook and screamed through the alien atmosphere. Red lights flashed everywhere. Warning sounds filled his ears. He pulled hard on the controls, but nothing worked. The engines were dead. He was going to crash on Prime. Daniel had been a pilot in the Earth fleet for 12 years. He had survived asteroid storms and pirate attacks. He had flown through the rings of Saturn and landed on moons that had no names. But he had never felt fear like this. Prime was the home world of the Seraphine Empire, one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Humans were not welcome here. The ground came up fast. Daniel closed his eyes and held on tight. The impact threw him forward and everything went black. When he woke up, he was lying in the dirt. His head hurt badly. Blood ran down his face from a cut above his eye. He could smell smoke and burning metal. Slowly, he pushed himself up and looked around. His shuttle was destroyed. Pieces of it were scattered across a field of strange purple grass. The sky above was pink and orange, with 3 small moons hanging low on the horizon. It was beautiful, but Daniel could not enjoy it. He knew he was in terrible danger. Then he heard them coming. The Seraphine soldiers appeared from the trees like ghosts. They were tall and thin, with skin that glowed softly in different colors. Their faces were sharp and elegant, with high cheekbones and large eyes that seemed to hold ancient secrets. Most striking of all were their wings. Each soldier had a pair of wings that looked like they were made of glass and starlight, folding neatly against their backs. They surrounded Daniel quickly. He raised his hands to show he had no weapons. He tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. One of the soldiers stepped forward and spoke in a cold voice. "Human, you have entered Seraphine space without permission. You will come with us." They took him to the capital city. Daniel had seen many alien cities in his life, but nothing like this. The buildings were tall and graceful, made of white stone that seemed to glow from within. Gardens floated in the air, connected by bridges of light. Music played softly from somewhere, though he could not see where. Everything was clean and perfect and old beyond imagination. The soldiers brought him to the Imperial Palace, a massive structure at the center of the city. Inside, thousands of Seraphine nobles filled a great hall. They all turned to look at Daniel as he was brought before the throne. Emperor sat on a throne of crystal. He was ancient, with silver skin and eyes like cold stars. His wings were larger than any others Daniel had seen, spreading out behind him like a cape of frozen light. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the hall. "A human," the emperor said slowly. "How interesting. We have not had a human visitor in many years. Tell me, creature, why have you come to my world?" Daniel found his voice at last. "My shuttle was damaged, Your Majesty. I crashed here by accident. I am a diplomatic courier, nothing more. I mean no harm to you or your people." The emperor studied him with those cold eyes. "Damaged, you say? Or perhaps you were sent here as a spy to learn our secrets before your people attack?" "No, Your Majesty. Earth wants peace with the Seraphine Empire. We have no reason to fight." Murmurs ran through the crowd. Some of the nobles laughed. Daniel heard one of them say, "Humans speak of peace, but they are violent creatures. They cannot help themselves." The emperor raised his hand and silence fell. "I do not believe you, human. Your species is young and aggressive. You have been in space for only a few centuries, and already you have fought a dozen wars among yourselves. Why should I trust anything you say?" Daniel did not know how to answer. Everything the emperor said was true. Humans had a bloody history. They had fought each other for thousands of years before they ever reached the stars. But they were trying to be better. They were trying to change. Before he could speak, a new voice rang out across the hall. "Father, wait." Everyone turned to look. A young Seraphine woman descended from a balcony above, her wings carrying her down slowly like falling snow. She landed gracefully beside the throne and looked at Daniel with curious eyes. She was the most beautiful being Daniel had ever seen. Her skin shifted between soft blue and pale violet, like the colors of twilight. Her eyes were deep purple, with tiny lights inside them that looked like distant galaxies. Her wings were different from the others, not white but faintly golden, catching the light in a way that made them seem almost alive. "Princess," the Emperor said, his voice softer now, "why do you interrupt?" "I wish to invoke the ancient law of sanctuary," she said calmly. "This human is injured and alone. He crashed on our world through no fault of his own. Our ancestors wrote laws to protect such travelers. We cannot simply execute him without giving him a chance to prove his innocence." The Emperor frowned. "You would show mercy to a human." "I would show justice," replied. "That is what you taught me, father, justice, not cruelty. Let the human stay as a guest while we investigate his claims. If he is truly a spy, we will discover it. If he is innocent, we will have honored our traditions." A long silence followed. Daniel could see the Emperor thinking, weighing his options. Finally, the old ruler nodded slowly. "Very well. The human will be placed under your supervision. You will be responsible for him. If he causes any trouble, the consequences will fall on you." "I accept," said without hesitation. And so Daniel, a simple human pilot from Earth, became a prisoner in the palace of the Seraphine Empire, watched over by the most beautiful princess in the galaxy. He had no idea that his life was about to change forever. The first weeks were strange and lonely. Daniel was given a small room in the palace gardens, surrounded by flowers he had never seen before. The plants glowed at night, filling his room with soft colors. Guards watched him at all times, but they never spoke to him. He was fed well and treated with basic respect, but he was still a prisoner. Then came to visit. She arrived on the third day, landing softly in the garden outside his door. Daniel watched her approach, his heart beating faster than it should. She sat down on a stone bench and looked at him with those galaxy eyes. "Tell me about Earth," she said simply. Daniel was surprised. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. I have read about your world in our records, but our knowledge is old. I want to hear about it from someone who has lived there." And so Daniel began to talk. He told her about the mountains of Colorado, where he had grown up. He told her about the way snow fell in winter, covering everything in white silence. He told her about his mother's cooking and his father's bad jokes. He told her about coffee and baseball and the sound of rain on a roof. Listened to every word. Her eyes never left his face, and when he finished, she smiled softly. "Your world sounds beautiful," she said. "I think I would like to see it someday." She came back the next day, and the day after that. Each visit, Daniel told her more about humanity. He played music for her on his broken, old songs from Earth that made her wings flutter with surprise. He showed her pictures of forests and oceans and cities full of lights. He told her stories of human heroes and dreamers and ordinary people who did extraordinary things. And slowly, without meaning to, Daniel began to fall in love. The weeks turned into months. Daniel lost count of how many times came to visit him in the garden. She came every day without fail, sometimes in the morning when the 3 moons were still fatting from the sky, sometimes in the evening when the flowers began to glow there. They talked about everything. Daniel told her about the history of humanity, the good parts and the bad. He did not hide the wars or the mistakes. He told her about the time humans almost destroyed their own planet and how they had learned from that terrible lesson. He told her about the first men and women who went to the stars, brave explorers who left everything behind just to see what was out there. Listened with wonder in her eyes. Her people were old and wise, but they had forgotten how to dream. They had stopped exploring long ago, content to rule the worlds they already had. The idea of going somewhere just to see it, with no plan and no purpose except curiosity, was strange and exciting to her. In return, she told Daniel about the Seraphine. She explained that her people had once been full of emotion, just like humans. They had loved and laughed and cried. But thousands of years ago, They had decided that emotions were dangerous. Emotions led to war and suffering, so they had trained themselves to feel nothing, to be calm and cold and logical in all things. "But you still feel," Daniel said one evening. "I can see it in your eyes." Looked away. Her wings shifted colors, turning a soft pink. "I am different from the others. I have always been different. My father says it is a weakness, but I am not so sure." "It is not weakness," Daniel said firmly. "Feeling things is what makes us alive. Without emotion, what is the point of living?" She looked at him then, and something passed between them, something neither of them could name. Daniel felt his heart pound in his chest. He wanted to tell her how he felt, but the words stuck in his throat. It was impossible. She was a princess. He was a prisoner. Nothing could ever happen between them. But he could not stop the feelings growing inside him. One day took him to a special place. She flew him through the sky, holding his hands as her wings carried them both over the mountains. They landed at a hidden waterfall deep in the forest, where the water glowed with soft blue light. "This is the Crystal Falls," she said. "It is a sacred place for my people. I'm not supposed to bring outsiders here, but I wanted you to see it." Daniel stood in silence, watching the glowing water fall into a pool of stars. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "Why did you bring me here?" he asked quietly. Was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Because I feel something when I am with you, something I have never felt before. My people have no word for it, but I think your people do." Daniel turned to look at her. Her skin was glowing soft violet. The color he had learned meant deep emotion among the seraphim. Her wings trembled slightly behind her. He wanted to tell her, he wanted to say the words, but before he could speak, a sound came from the forest. Someone was coming. Grabbed his hand. "We must go quickly." They flew back to the palace in silence. When they landed in the garden, squeezed his hand once before letting go. "We will talk more later," she said. Then she was gone, flying up into the night sky. But they did not get the chance. The next morning, guards came to Daniel's room. They were not the usual guards. These were soldiers of Lord, a powerful noble who Daniel had seen watching him with hatred in his eyes. Was tall and cold, with pure white skin and wings like frozen silver. He had wanted to marry for many years, and he hated Daniel with every fiber of his being. The soldiers took Daniel to a dark chamber beneath the palace. Was waiting there, sitting in a chair with his fingers pressed together. "Human," said slowly, "I have been watching you. I have seen the way the princess looks at you. I have seen her visit you every day, laughing at your stupid human stories. Do you think I would allow this to continue?" Daniel said nothing. He knew anything he said would only make things worse. Smiled a cold and cruel smile. "I have done some research. Your shuttle crash was not an accident, it was sabotage. Someone wanted you to crash on our world." Daniel felt his blood go cold. "What are you talking about?" "The Dominion Separatists," said. "A group of human rebels who want war between your people and mine. They sabotaged your shuttle. They sent you here as a pawn in their game." Daniel shook his head. "I knew nothing about this. I am innocent." "Perhaps," said, "but that does not matter. What matters is how I present the evidence to the Emperor, and I have decided to present it as proof that you are a spy, sent here to learn our secrets before the human invasion." "That is a lie." Laughed. "Of course it is a lie, but the Emperor will believe me. He wants to believe the worst about humans, and when he orders your execution will be heartbroken. She will need comfort, and I will be there to provide it." Daniel felt rage burning inside him, but he was surrounded by guards. There was nothing he could do. Presented his twisted evidence to the Emperor that same day, listened with growing anger on his face. When finished, the Emperor slammed his hand down on his throne. "I knew it," said. "I knew we could not trust a human. This creature has been spying on us all along, using my own daughter as his tool. The execution will take place at sunrise tomorrow." The guards dragged Daniel to a cell. He did not fight them. There was no point. He was going to die, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. He sat in the darkness for hours, thinking about his life. He thought about Earth and his family and all the things he would never see again. But mostly, he thought about her smile and her laugh and the way her wings glowed when she was happy. He thought about all the things he should have told her but never did. "I love her," he whispered to himself in the darkness. "I wish I could wed her. I wish I could spend my life with her, but now I will never get the chance." He did not hear the footsteps outside his cell. He did not see the door open. He only looked up when he heard her voice. Daniel stood in the doorway, her wings glowing bright gold. Tears were running down her face, shining like tiny diamonds in the darkness. "How did you get in here?" Daniel asked. "The guards are loyal to me," she said. "Some of them at least. Daniel, I heard what did. I know the evidence is false. I tried to tell my father, but he would not listen." "It does not matter," Daniel said. "Even if I am innocent of being a spy, your father will never let us be together. I am human. You are a princess. It was always impossible." Knelt down beside him, she took his hands in hers. "Tell me the truth," she said. "Before you spoke, I heard you whisper something. What did you say?" Daniel looked into her eyes. Those beautiful galaxy eyes that had haunted his dreams for months. He had nothing left to lose. "I said I wish I could wed you," he whispered. "I love you. I know it is crazy. I know it is impossible, but I love you with all my heart." His tears fell faster, but she was smiling now, a smile brighter than any star Daniel had ever seen. "Then you will," she said. Daniel stared at her. "What?" "There is an ancient law," said. "The right of bonding challenge. Any commoner who wishes to marry royalty can invoke this right and prove their worth through trials. If they succeed, no one can deny the marriage, not even the emperor. But I am not Seraphine, I am human." "The law does not say anything about species," said. "It only says that the challenger must have the heart of a true warrior and the soul of a true lover. I believe you have both." Daniel felt hope rising in his chest for the first time since his capture. "What are these trials?" "3 tests," said. "A test of wisdom, a test of combat, and a test of heart. They are dangerous. Many have died attempting them, but if you succeed, we can be together forever." Daniel did not hesitate. He had never been more sure of anything in his life. "I will do it," he said. "For you, I will do anything." Leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. It was the Seraphine way of showing deep affection. He had learned. Her skin was warm against his. "I knew you would say that," she whispered. "That is why I love you." And in that dark cell, surrounded by enemies and facing almost certain death, Daniel felt like the luckiest man in the galaxy. The next morning, the whole empire was talking about what had done. She had invoked the right of bonding challenge in front of the entire court. She had declared that she wished to marry Daniel of Earth, and that he would prove his worth through the ancient trials. Emperor was furious. His face had turned dark gray, the seraphine color of extreme anger. He had shouted at his daughter for an hour, demanding that she take back her words, but had refused. The old laws were sacred. Even the emperor could not break them. Lord had smiled when he heard the news. He saw this as his chance to destroy Daniel once and for all. Under the rules of the challenge, any noble could declare themselves as the opponent. Had immediately stepped forward. "I will be the challenger," he announced to the court. "I will prove that this human is unworthy of our princess. When he fails, I will claim the right to marry her myself." The rules were simple. Both challengers would face the same 3 trials. Whoever performed better would win. If Daniel failed even one trial, he would be executed and would be forced to marry. There was no going back. The first trial was the Maze of Whispers. It was an ancient structure beneath the palace, built thousands of years ago by the first Seraphine rulers. The maze was not made of walls but of shadows and light. It shifted and changed constantly, never the same twice. But the walls were not the real danger. The real danger was the whispers. Strange spirits lived in the maze. They could read the minds of anyone who entered. They would find your deepest fears, your darkest secrets, your most painful memories, and they would use them against you. They would whisper lies and truths together, trying to drive you mad. Many challengers had entered the maze over the centuries. Many had never come out. Went first. He entered the maze with confidence, his white wings folded tight against his back. The court watched on a special screen that showed only whether the challenger was still alive and moving. They could not see what happened inside. 3 hours later emerged. He was pale and shaken, but he was alive. He had completed the maze. "Easy enough," he said, though his voice trembled slightly. "The whispers tried to break me, but I am Seraphine. I have trained my whole life to feel nothing. Their tricks could not touch me." Now it was Daniel's turn. He stood at the entrance to the maze, looking into the darkness. He had no training. He had no special powers. He was just a human with a heart full of love and a head full of fear. Came to him before he entered. She was not allowed to speak to him, but she pressed something into his hand. It was a small golden feather from her wing. "For luck," she whispered. Daniel tucked the feather into his pocket and stepped into the maze. At first there was nothing but darkness. Daniel walked slowly, feeling his way along walls that seemed to disappear and reappear at random. The air was cold and thick, like breathing fog. Then the whispers began. They started soft, like wind through leaves, but soon they grew louder. Daniel heard voices he recognized, his mother, his father, his little sister back on Earth. "You were never good enough," his father's voice said. "You always disappointed me. You could never do anything right." Daniel felt his chest tighten. These were old wounds, things he had tried to forget. His father had been a strict man, hard to please. Daniel had spent his whole childhood trying to earn his approval and never quite succeeding. "You let your brother die," his sister's voice said. "You could have saved him, but you were too slow, too weak. He died because of you." Tears burned in Daniel's eyes. His brother had been killed during the Mars Uprising, a terrible conflict that had torn humanity apart 10 years ago. Daniel had been there. He had watched his brother die and been unable to stop it. It was the worst moment of his life. The whispers grew louder and louder. More voices joined in. Every person who had ever criticized him, every mistake he had ever made, every failure and weakness and fear. The voices screamed at him from all directions, filling his head until he could barely think. "You are nothing," the voices said together. "You are worthless. You will fail. You will die here, alone and forgotten. The princess will never love someone like you." Daniel fell to his knees. The pain was overwhelming. He wanted to cover his ears, but the voices were inside his head. There was no escape. And then he remembered something his grandmother had told him long ago. His grandmother had been a strong woman. She had raised 5 children alone during the resource wars when Earth was tearing itself apart. She had faced more hardship than Daniel could imagine, but she had never given up. And one day, when Daniel was a boy, she had shared her secret with him. "The worst part of pain is running from it," she had said. "When you run, it chases you forever. But when you turn around and face it, when you look it right in the eye, it loses its power over you." Daniel stopped running. He stood up slowly, his legs shaking. He closed his eyes and let the voices wash over him. He listened to every word they said, and instead of fighting them, he answered. "Yes," he said out loud. "I disappointed my father. I was not the son he wanted. But I tried my best, and that is all anyone can do." The voices faltered slightly. "Yes," Daniel continued. "My brother died. I could not save him. I have carried that guilt for 10 years, but his death was not my fault. I loved him and I did everything I could. He would not want me to destroy myself with blame." The voices grew weaker. "Yes, I am scared. Yes, I might fail. Yes, I might die here, but fear is not weakness. Fear is what tells us we have something worth fighting for. I am fighting for the woman I love. I am fighting for a chance at happiness. And even if I fail, I will have tried. That is more than most people ever do. The voices fell silent. Daniel opened his eyes. The maze around him had changed. The shifting shadows were still now, and a path had appeared before him, glowing with soft golden light. He walked forward. More whispers tried to stop him along the way, but now he knew how to answer them. Each time they found a new fear, a new pain, he faced it honestly. He did not pretend to be strong or brave. He admitted his weaknesses. He accepted his flaws, and in doing so, he took away their power. The maze had been designed to break people who ran from their emotions, but Daniel was human. Humans did not run from emotions. They lived in them, swam in them, were shaped by them. Pain and fear and love and hope were not enemies to be defeated. They were teachers to be learned from. 2 hours and 47 minutes after he entered, Daniel walked out of the maze of whispers. The court stared in shocked silence. No one had ever completed the maze faster than a trained Seraphine noble. And this human had done it with no training at all. His face had gone completely white. His confident smile was gone. He looked at Daniel with something that might have been fear. Was crying, but she was smiling too. Her wings were glowing brighter than Daniel had ever seen them. Even Emperor looked impressed. He leaned forward on his throne and studied Daniel with new eyes. Interesting, the Emperor said slowly. Perhaps there is more to humans than I thought. Daniel did not respond. He was too tired, too drained from what he had just experienced. But inside his chest, hope was burning brighter than ever. 1 trial down, 2 to go. The second trial was combat. Daniel had known this was coming, but knowing did not make it easier. He was going to fight one of the most dangerous creatures in the known galaxy. There were beasts native to Prime. They were massive things, twice the size of a horse, with bodies covered in armor plates harder than steel. Their claws dripped with poison that could kill in seconds. Their jaws could bite through metal. For thousands of years, young Seraphine warriors had proven their courage by fighting these monsters in single combat. The Seraphine had a natural advantage. They could fly. The traditional strategy was to stay in the air, striking down at the beast from above, staying out of reach of its deadly claws. Seraphine warriors had developed this into an art form, a beautiful dance of death in the sky. But Daniel could not fly. The night before the trial came to his room. She looked terrible. Her skin was pale gray and her wings hung limp behind her back. "You cannot do this," she said. "I was wrong to ask you. The maze was one thing, but this is different. No wingless creature has ever defeated you will die." Daniel took her hands. They were cold and trembling. "Tell me about your people," he said. Looked confused. "What?" "Tell me about the Seraphine. You said your people used to feel emotions. You said they chose to stop. Why?" Was quiet for a moment. "Thousands of years ago, there was a great war. The Seraphine were a passionate people back then. We loved deeply and hated deeply. The war lasted for centuries. Billions died. Whole worlds were destroyed. When it finally ended, our ancestors decided that emotions were too dangerous. They trained themselves to be calm and cold, to think instead of feel. They believed it was the only way to survive." And did it work? In some ways, yes. There have been no more great wars. Our civilization is stable and peaceful, but we lost something too. We lost our dreams. We lost our wonder. We stopped exploring the stars because we saw no reason to go. We stopped creating art because we felt no inspiration. We became safe, but we also became empty. Daniel nodded slowly. "Let me tell you about humans," he said. He sat down on the bed and pulled down beside him. She curled her wings around herself like a blanket, and he began to speak. "Humans have never stopped feeling," he said. "We have tried. After every great war, some people say we should become more logical, more cold. But we never manage it. We keep falling in love. We keep dreaming impossible dreams. We keep doing stupid, brave, wonderful things that make no sense. Is that not a weakness? Asked. Sometimes, but it is also our greatest strength. Let me tell you a story. He told her about the first humans who went to Mars. Their colony had failed in the first year. A terrible dust storm had destroyed their supplies. They were stranded millions of miles from Earth with no food, no water, and no hope of rescue. By all logic, they should have given up, Daniel said. They should have accepted their fate and died quietly. But they did not. They refused to quit. They built greenhouses out of broken equipment. They found water in places no one thought to look. They survived for 3 years on a dead planet just because they refused to believe it was impossible. He told her about his grandmother, who had raised 5 children alone during the worst war in human history. He told her about doctors who worked without sleep to save lives during plagues. He told her about ordinary people who ran into burning buildings to save strangers. Humans do not know how to give up, Daniel said. It is not that we are brave. It is that surrendering simply does not occur to us. We see a problem and we try to fix it. We see a wall and we try to climb it. We fail over and over again, but we keep trying until we succeed or die. Was staring at him with those galaxy eyes. You are really going to fight, are you not? Yes. Even though you will probably die. Yes. Why? Daniel smiled. Because I love you, and love makes humans do impossible things. The next day, the arena was packed with thousands of Seraphim. They had come from across the Empire to watch the impossible sight of a wingless human fighting. Most of them expected to see a quick death. Went first. His was released into the arena, a massive beast with black armor plates and red eyes full of rage. Flew into the air immediately, circling high above the monster. He moved with grace and precision, striking down with his blade whenever the beast looked away. The fight lasted 20 minutes. Finally, found an opening and drove his sword through the eye, the only soft spot on its body. The beast fell and the crowd cheered politely. Landed and bowed to the emperor. His armor was covered in blood, but none of it was his own. It had been a perfect demonstration of Seraphim combat technique. Now it was Daniel's turn. He walked into the arena with nothing but a simple sword. The gates opened and his emerged. This one was even bigger than with white armor plates and 6 legs instead of 4. Its roar shook the ground beneath Daniel's feet. For a long moment, Daniel stood completely still. The crowd held its breath. They stalked toward him, sensing easy prey. Then Daniel did something no one expected. He dropped to his knees and pressed his palm flat against the ground. He closed his eyes. The charged. But Daniel did not move. He stayed perfectly still, his hand on the ground, his eyes closed. The beast ran toward him at full speed, its claws ready to tear him apart. At the last possible second, Daniel rolled to the side. The crashed past him, its claws hitting empty dirt. It spun around, confused. The crowd gasped, leaned forward in his seat. Daniel had figured something out. He had spent all night studying recordings of hunts, looking for any weakness he could exploit, and he had found one. It was nearly blind. Its eyes were small and weak, useless in the thick forests of its home. It hunted by sensing movement through the air. When prey flew overhead, they could feel the wind from their wings. It was perfectly designed to catch flying creatures. But Daniel did not fly. When he stayed low and moved slowly, the beast could barely sense him at all. The fight became something no one had ever seen before. Daniel did not dance in the sky like a Seraphim warrior. He crawled in the dirt like a human. He moved behind rocks and under platforms. He threw dust and debris to confuse the beast. He used the arena itself as a weapon, leading the into walls and traps of his own making. It was not elegant, it was not beautiful, but it was effective. They grew more and more frustrated. It could not find this strange prey that would not fly. It charged blindly at shadows, crashing into barriers and stumbling over obstacles. Finally, Daniel saw his chance. The beast was trapped in a corner, tangled in the wreckage of a collapsed platform. Its belly was exposed. Daniel ran, not away but toward the monster. Everyone in the arena screamed. This was suicide. The claws would kill him before he got close. But Daniel had timed it perfectly. The beast was off balance, struggling to free itself. Its claws swung wildly but hit nothing. Daniel slid under its massive body, feeling the heat of its breath on his face. He drove his sword up into its belly with all his strength. The blade found its heart. It let out one final roar and collapsed. Daniel barely managed to roll away before the massive body hit the ground. Silence filled the arena. Then slowly a sound began to build. It was not the polite applause the Seraphine usually gave. It was something louder, something wilder. It was cheering. Thousands of Seraphine were on their feet, screaming and clapping. Wings flapped in excitement. Colors rippled across faces in ways Daniel had never seen before. For the first time in centuries, the Seraphine were feeling something. They were amazed. They were inspired. They were cheering for a human. Daniel stood in the center of the arena, covered in dirt and blood, and looked up at the royal balcony. Was crying openly, her wings blazing gold. Even Emperor was standing, his face showing an emotion that might have been respect. And Lord sat frozen in his seat, his face white with terror. The impossible had happened. The human had won. One trial left. The final trial was the test of hearts. Deep beneath the palace, in a chamber that had not been opened in 1,000 years, there stood an ancient artifact called the Flame of Eternity. It was not an ordinary flame. It burned without fuel, shining with all the colors of the rainbow at once. It had been created by the first Seraphine rulers as a way to judge the truth of the soul. Anyone who stood before the Flame of Eternity would have their heart laid bare. The flame would show what they truly wanted, what they truly loved. It could not be fooled by words or actions. It could not be tricked by training or discipline. It saw only the naked truth. If a person loved purely and selflessly, the flame would burn gold. If their love was tainted by selfish desire, the flame would burn cold blue. There was no in-between. There was no hiding. This was the trial that truly mattered. Went first. He walked into the chamber with his head held high. He had trained for this moment his entire life. He had convinced himself that he loved, that his desire to marry her was based on genuine feeling. He stood before the flame and opened his heart. The flame flickered. Colors swirled within it, red and orange and purple. Then slowly it turned cold blue. The watchers gasped. The flame was showing what everyone secretly knew but no one had said. Did not love, he wanted her power. He wanted her status. He wanted the throne that would come with marrying the princess. His heart was full of ambition and pride, not love. Stumbled backward, his face twisted with shock and rage. "This is wrong," he shouted. "The flame is broken, it must be sabotage." But everyone knew the Flame of Eternity could not be sabotaged. It simply showed the truth. Emperor looked at with cold eyes. "Step aside, Lord, you have failed." Opened his mouth to argue, but the guards were already moving toward him. He had no choice but to step away, his white skin flushing gray with shame. Now it was Daniel's turn. He walked into the chamber slowly. His body still ached from the fight with the. His mind was tired from the maze of whispers, but his heart was clear. He stood before the Flame of Eternity and looked into its dancing colors. The flame seemed to reach out toward him, touching his soul with invisible fingers. Daniel felt it searching through his memories, his thoughts, his deepest feelings. He did not try to hide anything. He had nothing to hide. The flame saw his childhood on Earth. It saw his dreams and his fears. It saw the pain he carried from his brother's death. It saw his loneliness during the long years in space. and it saw. It saw the first moment he had looked at her in the Emperor's court. It saw every conversation they had shared in the palace gardens. It saw the way his heart raced whenever she smiled. It saw the love that had grown inside him, day by day, until it filled every corner of his soul. And the flame saw something else too. It saw that Daniel's love was not selfish. He did not love because she was beautiful, though she was. He did not love her because she was a princess, though she was. He loved her because of who she was inside. He loved her curiosity and her kindness. He loved her quiet rebellion against a cold society. He loved the way she laughed at his jokes and asked endless questions about Earth. He loved her for her, not for what she could give him. And more than that, he wanted her happiness more than his own. If she had told him to leave and never return, if that would have made her happy, he would have done it. His love was not about possession. It was about giving everything he had to someone who deserved it. The flame blazed bright. It turned gold. Not pale gold or dim gold, but brilliant, blinding gold. The light filled the entire chamber, spilling out through the doors and windows. It was that the flame had burned in 3,000 years. Everyone in the chamber shielded their eyes. Some of the nobles fell to their knees. Even Emperor stepped back, his ancient face showing something that looked like awe. When the light finally faded, Daniel stood alone before the flame, unchanged and unafraid. Silence filled the chamber. Then Emperor walked forward. His steps were slow and careful, as if he was approaching something sacred. He stopped in front of Daniel and looked at him for a long moment. "I have lived for 600 years," the Emperor said quietly. "I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched stars die. I thought I had seen everything there was to see." He paused, and his voice grew even softer. "I was wrong. I have never seen a love like yours." The Emperor turned to look at the flame, still glowing faintly gold. "My people abandoned emotion long ago. We thought it made us weak. We thought it led to suffering. But looking at you, I wonder if we made a terrible mistake. Your love is not weakness. It is strength beyond anything I possess." He turned back to Daniel and did something that no Seraphine Emperor had ever done before. He bowed his head. "Daniel of Earth," Emperor said, "you have proven yourself worthy. You have passed all 3 trials. No one can deny your claim to my daughter's hand." A sob came from across the chamber, was standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Her wings were blazing so bright that she looked like an angel made of pure light. She flew across the chamber and threw herself into Daniel's arms. He caught her and held her tight, feeling her heart beat against his chest. "I knew it," she whispered. "I knew you could do it. I knew from the moment I met you." Daniel could not speak. He just held her and let his own tears fall. The wedding was held 1 week later. It was the greatest celebration the Seraphine Empire had ever seen. Guests came from 1,000 worlds. Ships filled the sky above the palace, carrying nobles and commoners alike who wanted to witness this historic moment. Daniel stood at the altar in a suit of white and gold, designed by the finest tailors in the empire. He had never felt more out of place in his life. But then the music started and appeared. She walked toward him with her wings spread wide, glowing brighter than the 3 moons overhead. She wore a dress made of starlight and crystal, but Daniel barely noticed it. He only saw her eyes, those beautiful galaxy eyes that had captured his heart from the very first day. The ceremony was long and full of ancient rituals that Daniel did not understand, but the ending was simple. He took his hands in his, looked into her eyes, and said the words that had been waiting inside him for months. "I love you," he said. "I will always love you, for as long as the stars burn in the sky, my heart belongs to you." Smiled that beautiful smile. "And mine to you," she said, "forever and always." They kissed, and the crowd erupted in cheers that could be heard across the planet. In the years that followed, the marriage of Daniel and changed everything. It marked the beginning of a new alliance between humans and Seraphine, built not on treaties or trade, but on something deeper, on the understanding that emotions were not a weakness to be overcome, but a strength to be embraced. The Seraphine began to change. Slowly, carefully, they started to feel again. They started to dream again. Young Seraphine traveled to Earth to learn about human art and music. Human and Seraphine scientists worked together to explore new stars. The two species, once strangers, became partners and friends. And at the center of it all were Daniel and they had 3 children, beautiful beings with human hearts and seraphine wings. They lived in the palace gardens where they had first fallen in love, surrounded by glowing flowers and the sound of laughter. One day, many years later, a young Seraphine asked Daniel the question everyone wanted answered. "How did you do it?" the young one asked. "How did a simple human win the heart of a princess and change the galaxy forever?" Daniel smiled, the same warm smile he had always had. "Humans are not special because we are strong," he said. "We are not special because we are smart. We are special because we never stop feeling. We never stop hopping. We never stop loving, even when it seems impossible." He looked across the garden to where was playing with their youngest child, her wings glowing warm amber in the evening light. "That is exactly why she chose me," he said softly, "and that is exactly why I was worthy of being chosen." Looked up and caught his eye. She smiled, and Daniel felt his heart fill with the same joy he had felt on the day they met. Some things he knew would never change. And love, true love, would burn eternal. The end.